What up? I am live on Facebook, and I think this is probably the first live video that I've ever done. So I'll wait a couple seconds. I see got a couple people watching. Good morning, everybody. Greer, what's up? Of course, I see my cousin Michael on there. All that profanity is unneeded. Good morning to you too. All right, the purpose of this video. All right, so I woke up super early this morning and I went and did a little bit of PT. All right, and so while I did PT, I was thinking about a lot of different things, and I kind of categorized a few different things, and it has to do with the Army. And so the way I kind of want to frame it is like this. All right, there are 5 things that I would change about the Army if I could, right? If I was like king for a day. And I know that a lot of us soldiers have thought about this, like, what would I change? You know, what would I do to make the Army a better place? All right, so I'll go ahead and get started with my 5 things that I would change about the Army if I could. Before I do that, let me start out by saying this. Disclaimer time. These are my opinions. They have nothing to do with the Department of Defense. They have nothing to do with the Department of the Army. These are not official policy. This is just me telling you what I think, my opinion, right? As a senior NCO and as a soldier. All right. The first thing that I would change about the Army is the government travel card. The government travel card, for all of you that don't know, it is mandatory for everybody in the Army to have a government travel card. What is this? This is a card, right? A line of credit that is in the soldier's name. It's mandatory. The Army it's a requirement. It's mandatory for every soldier in the Army to have this line of credit in their name. If you don't have this line of credit in your name, then you're basically breaking regulation. So why do we have the government travel card? Well, it's simple. In the Army, we go TDY a lot. That's temporary duty, right? And that could be anything from some mission to go fight fires to, you know, professional military education. You go to school or something like that. And you have the government travel card for that purpose, right? So the Army sends you from your normal duty station to a new place temporarily. And that's how they pay for it, right? They give you this government travel card. You swipe your card to stay in a hotel. You swipe your card for food, like per diem. And it works out pretty well in theory, right? So the truth of the matter is this. Not everybody has a government travel card, first off. So there's already a problem there. The second thing, and this is the main thing that I would change about it, is the card is in the soldier's name. So if the soldier uses the card while they're on temporary duty and the payment is not made by the Army, because you have to keep this in mind. The Army is supposed to allot or appropriate funds for this soldier to be on temporary duty, and they got to pay for housing, they got to pay for food, right? They got to make sure the soldier's taken care of. If for whatever reason that payment doesn't go through on time, i.e. maybe you have an incompetent soldier that's managing the government travel card in the battalion, or the paperwork got messed up, or, you know, there's a technical glitch, right? If for whatever reason that payment doesn't come through from the Army, guess who's on the hook? If you guessed the soldier, you would be right. Bingo, right? The soldier's on the hook. And so what are the repercussions of that? The repercussions are this. The soldier's credit gets swamped, right? The soldier's credit gets swamped. And anybody who has had, you know, experience with having bad credit or no credit, the worst thing we could do is have soldiers out there who have bad credit. I mean, we need it nowadays, right? And I just I think there has to be a better way to appropriate funding for soldiers who go on TDY. You used to get like cash, and then you spent that cash on there. The other reason why I think we have the government travel card is so the government can kind of monitor what we're spending that money on. And there have certainly been instances of, you know, misuse of government funds, i.e. soldiers swiping their card at Dillard's and buying a bunch of polo and whatever else with their government travel card. That should not happen, right? And so we shouldn't be doing that type of stuff. But that being said, I think what a lot of people do, and at least people that are smart in my experience, they don't use the government travel card at all. They use their own money, and then at the end of it, they go and fill out their voucher, and then the Army gives them an extra paycheck, extra pay, whatever that may be, into their bank account. And they don't have to worry about making a payment to Citibank or whatever the credit card company is for the government travel card. So that is the first thing, the very first thing that I would change. All right. Number two. All right. Number two. I'm gonna get a sip of coffee here. All right. Number two is near and dear to my heart. All right. Separate rations. Okay. So a lot of folks, especially civilians, don't know that every soldier in the Army gets a paycheck. And on that paycheck, they get three entitlements: their base pay, their BAS, which is basic allowance for sustenance, and their BAH, which is basic allowance for housing, right? Every soldier gets those allowances. Soldiers who are single or who are deployed get that BAS, and that's what we're going to talk about, right? We're going to talk about the BAS on number two for things that I would change. Soldiers that are single that live in the barracks automatically get that BAS, or a very large majority of that BAS, taken from them so that they can eat in the dining facility. So they get issued like a little meal card, or it's attached to their military ID card, and they have to eat in a DFAT. So my argument against this whole idea is it feels like we're using soldiers' entitlements to fund an entire MOS, like the culinary arts specialist and the dining facilities. So I can't think of another example of taking a soldier's entitlement to fund another MOS or another MOS's job, right? So we're not taking our base pay to pay for the howitzers that we're shooting, right? So even $1 to do that without it's mandatory for them to do that is not right in my view. I think that every soldier should have the option of whether they get the full BAS or not. And if they choose to go eat in a dining facility, then just swipe their card and pay for it like anybody else would pay for it that is already receiving the separate rats. All right. I also think when it comes to BAS that we should never, ever, ever take a soldier's BAS who's going to the field and conducting training. I don't think we should ever do that. I don't really see a reason for it. I feel like we could probably, pay for the soldiers' MREs a different way. Surely there's another way that we can fund that, right? I just don't think we should ever take any entitlement from a soldier other than like UCMJ or something like that. All right, so that's the second thing. The third thing, right? The third thing that I would change, and this is for my field artillery brethren, right? It's FA specific, and I am currently in the process of writing a paper and trying to kind of go official routes with this, particularly for 13 Bravos, which are cannon crew members. I think that there should be a separate MOS or ASI between towed artillery and heavy artillery, like a Paladin, self-propelled artillery. And the reason why, and almost every single person that I talk to has dealt with this, especially on the Senior NCO side. How many times have we gotten a staff sergeant that came from a towed unit into a Paladin unit, and we threw them in a howitzer, and they don't know how to perform, right? They cannot perform because they have no experience on it. But we expect them to be subject matter experts and to learn. Yes, it is our job as NCOs to teach them. I understand that 100%, and we do, and I think we do a hell of a job doing that. But I think the best way that I can argue this is like this, right? And I don't know a whole lot about warrant officers. I don't know a whole lot about, flight status or anything like that. But how often are we asking an Apache pilot to go fly a freaking Chinook or Black Hawk? I mean, I don't know how often that is. And I think it's the same way. I can't count how many times a guy comes from an ABCT, a soldier comes from an ABCT to an IBCT or an SBCT, and is so far behind the power curve that it affects the readiness of the unit, right? It literally affects the readiness of the unit. The training value, the training level goes down because we have people in key billets that don't know the technical or tactical uses of the piece that they're operating on. So I think that it should be a completely different MOS or a completely different ASI. That's just my experience with it. I know plenty of people who feel the same. I know a few people who feel differently. And I'm going to write more about that. I'm going to try to get this idea published. I know there's a lot of intricacies and a lot more involved to that idea than I probably know. And so I already reached out to a few friends of mine, a couple branch managers and commissioned officers when it comes to that. So that's my opinion on that. I would definitely change that if I could be king for a day in the Army. All right, the fourth thing, and this will be pretty quick. The fourth thing is the way that we treat single soldiers, right? The foundation of the Army is, in my opinion, is and should be trust, right? It should be trust between leaders and soldiers and trust between soldiers and leaders, right? It goes up and it goes down. And I think that we have, bred a culture of mistrust specifically from the soldiers to the leaders, right? And the reason why I think that, I guess I could give one good example, is what time in the morning do we conduct health and welfare checks on soldiers? I'll give you a second to answer that, right? I'll tell you this, early as hell, super early, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, right? We have these scheduled health and welfare checks. And so for the civilian folks that are watching, soldiers that live in the barracks, single soldiers that live in the barracks, those are that's government property. Those are government quarters, right? And so occasionally to try to, influence them from not doing the wrong thing and having contraband or drugs or guns or whatever else in the barracks, occasionally we do what they call health and welfare checks. And we do those super early in the morning, and we bring like military police in with dogs, right? But I always ask myself this question, and I participate, and I don't really feel great about that. But we do this super early in the morning. You tell me why. Why do you think we do it early in the morning? I'll tell you why. Because we don't trust our soldiers, and we want to catch them. We want to catch our soldiers doing the wrong thing. That's just my opinion. Why else would we want to tell our soldiers, like surprise our soldiers and try to wake them up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning with police dogs and random people going through their rooms and opening up drawers and looking. I mean, it's just craziness to me. And I get it, it's government property. I just disagree that in the way that we do that, right? There certainly has to be another way that respects the soldier's space, right? And there was a senior NCO that I just saw on Facebook recently that was in the barracks, right? And this is a high-level senior NCO, right? And he just posted on Facebook recently and said, you've heard of the term, "This is my squad," and he's trying to coin the term, "This is my home." And he's talking about this is my home, and these are, I'm in the barracks and this is my home, right? But how could a soldier think that that is their home when he or she has random people coming in, searching, making sure everything, and I get it. The soldiers have some responsibility. They have some responsibility in it. They should keep it squared away and nice and neat. They shouldn't have drugs. They shouldn't have, firearms or anything like that in there. And I get that. But I feel like soldiers don't think the barracks are their home. They just think it's a place they sleep because that's the way we treat the process. That's the system that's in place. And I just think that, that's one example of how we treat our single soldiers way differently than we treat married soldiers. And I don't think we should ever do that. I know folks are young, but, why would I treat a 19-year-old PFC any different any different than I would treat a single PFC. The level of responsibility, the age, all of that is the same, right? Are we saying that just because the soldier's married, then they're more responsible? I completely disagree with that. I don't think that's the case at all. I think that we should treat all of our soldiers the exact same and be fair across the board, regardless of their marital status. You know, the reason why we have soldiers who are, you know, participating in fraudulent marriages is exactly that. They just want to get out of the barracks. They'll go marry each other if they want to, right? Just to get out of the barracks so they don't have to deal with that 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, dogs coming through looking for freaking drugs and guns and whatever else. I just think it's a little bit kind of BS. All right. The last thing, right? The last thing that I want to talk about on here on my first Facebook Live session, okay, is behavioral health and mental health, okay? So unless you've been sleeping under a rock, you know that we have a suicide problem in the Army, right? I think we have a suicide problem in society in general, but, you know, this is focused on the Army, and we definitely have a problem with it. The entire point of behavioral health is to try to mitigate, you know, suicides, right? And so obviously we have counseling sessions where we can kind of talk about anxiety and stress and so on and so forth. But the whole point of BH, the whole point of that clinic is to stop suicides from happening. So I think that if you're a leader, and this is specifically for leaders out there, right? I think that if you're a leader and you are still an individual who is lying to your soldiers about behavioral health, every day you're lying to them, every single day. Every time you open your mouth and say, go to BH, if you need help, go get help. Every single time you tell them that, and then you put that caveat at the end that says, go to BH, go to behavioral health, get the help you need, it will not affect your career. You're a liar. You're an absolute liar. Every single time that a soldier goes to BH, if they have a suicidal tendencies or ideation or even a suicide attempt, and they go to inpatient care, they are automatically hit with a profile that stops them from deploying. We're talking about readiness for 1 year, right? They can't deploy. They can't deploy for an entire year. So that's one more person that we're taking out of the fight, right? And they literally cannot go anywhere. Is that waiverable? Sure. Anything's waiverable these days, right? But it's not just deployability when it comes to BH, right? They're automatically kind of flagged through the S2 for their security clearance. So if they have a secret or a top secret clearance, there's an automatic little ding that goes on that says, should we allow this soldier who's having these, you know, mental health problems or behavioral health issues to continue to keep their security clearance? You know, they're asking that question. I've sat in the meetings myself and saw their names on the slide saying these soldiers are, you know, up for review on their security clearance. Well, why is that? It's because the soldier went to BH, they were having a tough time, and now we're questioning whether or not the soldier should have a security clearance. And then the third thing, right, the third thing that would affect the soldier's career is, and this stuff's waiverable, but it is very difficult for a soldier who has a demonstrated need for behavioral health assistance, specifically talking about suicidal tendencies or ideations or attempts. It is very difficult for them to ever be a recruiter or a drill sergeant, right? And as anybody in the Army knows, if you want to find success in the Army, if you're a recruiter or a drill sergeant and you're successful in those broadening type assignments, right? If you're successful in those, then you are setting yourself up to possible selection and potential for promotion to the next grade, like Senior NCO level grade, right? And so I think that we need to tell our soldiers the truth. I don't think that we need to dissuade or persuade them to not go. As a matter of fact, I think the opposite. You know, and if anybody's out here watching, I'll say it, and I'll say it like this: if you're struggling, right, and you are seriously considering suicide or hurting yourself or hurting somebody else, and you need help, all of that stuff about your job and about your potential of, you know, it affecting your job goes out the window, right? I 100% think that you need to go get the help that you need. 100%. And if you need to call me, if you got my phone number, give me a call, right? If it's through Facebook Messenger, message me, whatever it takes. It doesn't matter what time in the day or night it is. I'll answer. If I need to come get you, I'll come get you, right? It's near and dear to my heart. I've been affected by suicide, in the past couple of years, with soldiers in my own battalion or my previous battalion, and it is such a terrible thing, and it's almost like an epidemic that we're going through. So if you need help, get help. Leaders, make sure you tell your soldiers, if you need help, get help, but you need to tell them. They need to know the truth. They need to know that if they need help, to go get help, but also that it could potentially affect their career. And I just don't think we need to lie to soldiers anymore. I think we need to be honest with them. I think we need to give our soldiers the benefit of the doubt in their ability and capacity to know and make informed decisions about what they should be doing. So those are the 5 things. This live's kind of gone a little bit longer than I thought. If you have comments or you have questions or anything, you can leave your comments there below. I appreciate everybody for watching. So, maybe I can do this a little bit more often as I get more comfortable with being on live on Facebook here. So the 5 things that I would change, right, to kind of review: the government travel card being mandatory, separate rations for all soldiers. FA specific is, I think it should be a different MOS or ASI for 13 Bravos between towed and self-propelled howitzers. The treatment of our single soldiers, and the way we go about behavioral health and mental health, specifically on suicide. I 100% think that if I was king for a day, I would change those things. All right. So I appreciate everybody's comments. If you got any questions or you got anything you want to hear me talk about, just comment below. Thanks for all the likes. Thanks for all the views. You guys have a great day. No guts, no glory. Lead with honor.